This is TWiT.
Well, we thought this was on the way, and turns out it was. Microsoft held an event earlier this week as we record this show that we knew was going to have something to do with AI. Joining us to talk about what Microsoft is up to is Windows Central's own Daniel Rubino. Welcome back to the show, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to get you on to talk about this. Now, of course, we know Microsoft held this event on Tuesday. I was hoping that you could start by giving us a brief summary of everything that was announced before we dig into kind of the big headline.
Sure. Well, there was quite a lot of announced, but the key takeaways here is, well, Microsoft's had the Bing search engine for many years. It's been sort of the butt of jokes for a lot of people, but they've added AI to it, and AI, I'll put in quotes because, that's a broad term, which we can get into more specifics of how it's actually implemented. But yeah, so it's sort of the ChatGPT model that's built into it. So it's going to give you more refined, more accurate results. And again, we can expand upon what that means because that's also a loaded term. But they also announced a new version of Microsoft Edge, which has, besides a UI overhaul that matches more closely to Windows 11, they also changed performance on the back end. So the whole thing is just faster and a little bit smoother. But they also built in this chat model into the browser itself with a new Bing button in the corner that then gives you access to these new features. And of course, this is all just the beginning of what Microsoft is going to be doing with AI. They're starting with search. And there's some good reasons why they're starting with search besides the obvious ones. But, we can talk a little bit about that, why, AI can or cannot be dangerous, going on with technology. I know a lot of people have concerns about it, but with search, it makes a little bit more sense since the user's always in control. And, in terms of search, there's nothing that the AI is technically controlling that could threaten anyone. The most it can do is give you bad information. But that's, about it versus putting it into some, more important systems, maybe autos or, other technology that could actually affect a person's health or well-being.
Absolutely. Now, this, I think, was kind of the biggest thing for me is I was curious to see what exactly the company was going to announce, how it was going to announce this long rumored now integration with OpenAI's own technology. And of course, it is all about the ChatGPT powered Bing search. And I am curious, first of all, have you been able to try it out? And then in doing so, I'm curious if you had tried the chat.openai.com, I believe is the URL, ChatGPT's, or rather OpenAI's own ChatGPT service, and if there's a difference between the use of those two.
Sure. So to answer the question, yeah, I'm actually using it right in front of me as I speak. I can use it right now if I wanted to. So they do have early access. Press got even earlier access to it. So we got to cut the line a little bit for, I think, obvious reasons. But it is slowly rolling out. You can sign up for access now. You'll be put on a wait list. They're basically slowly rolling this out to users. And it will go wider in the coming weeks and months based on performance, feedback, and optimizations that they'll be implementing. Now, in terms of what people know as ChatGPT 3.0, which is available on, as you mentioned, the OpenAI website. So that's a cool little system where you can just you can ask a question and it's going to give you the results and it'll be summarized and it can do all sorts of neat things. This does that, but it's different. So it's not actually ChatGPT. It's similar, but they call this a Prometheus model. That's what actually Microsoft is using. It's built off of aspects of ChatGPT, namely its conversational methods. They are both large language models, but Prometheus is, which also is just a great word, by the way, great name.
Indeed.
For it, is much more powerful than ChatGPT. Now, they won't say specifically, but we can effectively say this is ChatGPT 4.0. They won't say that publicly. They'll say sort of the next version of ChatGPT or the more advanced version. But that's internally what we're hearing that it basically kind of is. So the differences are when you go to ChatGPT and you ask it something, it's going to give you the answer, but it's not as as refined as the Bing search results. So Prometheus is built to be part of search, not just giving a conversational response. It really goes out onto the web, pulls in data, correlates data. More importantly, it annotates that data. So as it gives you a response, it's sort of like a term paper. It's going to give you a little 1, a little 2, a little 3. And when you hover over all those, it's going to give you the original source of where that information came from, in case A, you want to go read more, or 2, validate the information yourself. And then the other difference is ChatGPT kind of just ends. You ask it a question, it does its job, and then you can go on to the next question. What this does, though, will prompt you for further suggestive content based on what you asked. And it's really helpful because if you ask it a question, it's going to be like, what about this? It'll give you like 3 suggested things, and then you can just click that. You don't need to re-enter anything, and it's going to give you another contextual result based on the previous thing you were asking, so you can go even deeper. And this is very important because, I've used ChatGPT, and what's neat about it, you have to kind of go there with a specific thing you want it to do, but unless it's like kind of being in a conversation with someone who's not good at conversation. That person just sits there, so anyway, and that weather. And you kind of don't know, how to converse there. So what this is doing is it's giving people a way in by going, I can provide you even more information on this topic. What about this? And you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. What about that? How is it different? And so then it'll serve up even more content for you. So it's sort of like Wikipedia, where you land on a Wikipedia page, you want to read about maybe a person, and then you're like reading it and you're like, oh, they were in that? What is that? And then you click that, and then you're about that movie. And then next thing you know, you're like an hour into Wikipedia, bringing in all this information. And that's kind of what they're doing with this, which is helpful to make people use it more. But obviously, time on page, and the more you're using the Bing service, the better for Microsoft. So there's it's sort of like the TikTok model, right? You want to keep people glued to it. And that's sort of, I think, also the other end of why they're doing that.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting to me is because, OpenAI has talked about how expensive it is for them to have the ChatGPT system and to run that, and how these kind of gone, okay, we'd like to do more AI stuff, but we've got so many users that if we open up the access to these tools, it's going to result in none of it working because it's just too much processing power. Did Microsoft address any of that? I mean, what are they doing? Is Azure behind what's going on there?
Yeah, sure. I did have conversations with people about that. And so there's a lot to that. They are using Azure to run this stuff. They also have a supercomputer that was announced around 2020 that they're using in conjunction with OpenAI to train these language models on. It's one of the only few supercomputers in the world, which is one reason why Microsoft has been able to get this model so advanced, seemingly so quickly and ready to actually go out to the public. But this is powered by Azure. They're working very closely with those teams. They have optimized the results to be faster. And that's the other half of it. So I said it's kind of based on ChatGPT 4.0. And that one of the things about that is it's supposed to be a faster model. It's supposed to be quicker. But they're doing optimizations on the back end, addressing the pricing thing. Microsoft wouldn't get into specifics. They'll just say something to the effect of that they're being very efficient how they use data. For example, say you just ask a basic question, like a website or what's the weather, or you're just looking up a person's name, right? That's just going to be a basic search, and it won't use this deep language model, meaning it won't, offset their processing ability. It will just still use the regular kind of Bing with that. It's only into effect when you usually go into the chat mode or ask a deeper question, then it'll hand off to the system. So they're being efficient that way. Also, just the way the model is actually operating is just being more efficient. They've also said that in time, like all technology, this will become more efficient in pricing, and it'll come down in scale, specifically because they're working with OpenAI, and this is just evolving technology. They're going to offset some of the costs, though, like all search results with ads. There will be ads present. Now, when you go into chat mode, there's no like pop-up ads that are, showing up there, but there will be sort of like sponsored content here and there. So it's just like Google. There will be advertising there. I will say during the investor call that they had, to put this into perspective, they probably may even eat some cost here. And I don't think they necessarily mind, because they publicly stated for every 1% of search market share that they gain, presumably taking away from Google. It equals $2 billion in annual revenue.
Whoa.
So that's just putting into perspective why they're saying that this search is so important for them, because for every 1%, it's $2 billion. And so if they gain a couple percentage points, you can imagine what that would affect on their bottom line. They also have said that because they control, they're a distant second from Google, they can innovate faster, they can take bigger risks, they can do more because they have less to lose compared to Google, who's going to be a bigger company that's a little bit tougher to get change things in search. And so they're going to be more dynamic than Google in this space. So what we see today is just the beginning of it. We're going to see a lot more coming online from Microsoft in that regard there. But that's sort of the answer to the cost. There's also another little point here, too, which is the free model, what we're kind of using today. It's not perfectly fast. It's faster than ChatGPT, but you can still see pauses once in a while, and it'll tell you, like, generating an answer for you, so it's doing something. When I absolutely am convinced that enterprise who subscribe to Microsoft 365 will and are paying for their services will get a prioritized computing of this versus the open free version. Now, will Microsoft tie that into, say, the consumer market and Microsoft 365? We don't know yet, but I would bet they would, because that will help offset that cost even further, as well as giving people a benefit that, well, you get the head of the line for this data and how quickly it'll be processed.
That makes sense. Yeah. So there is some payment involved with it. And wow, that percentage that you were talking about, that is mind blowing. Now, you did briefly touch on this, but I am curious. I think folks would definitely be interested. Who right now can use this, and when is it expected to be a full rollout? And is there something that folks can do to get to try it now or soon if they want to give it a go?
Yeah, the short answer is you can go to bing.com/new, and then you'll see sort of like a sign up page. And I believe you should have a Microsoft account to be able to do that, which kind of makes sense. But it'll tell you the process you need to do it. And also, if you start using Bing as like your default search engine and set it as your homepage and all that, you start using the mobile app, you'll probably get even sort of bumped up in the line because you're using it more, right? So they want to kind of prioritize the people who are actually the users of Bing and are actually involved with it and actually using it day to day versus the person who right now is just like, I've never touched Bing, I don't know anything about it, I just want to try it right now. And those people will get access to it. Microsoft's been pretty transparent with all this. They said, yes, this will come to even other web browsers in the future. This is going to be very open. They're going to allow other services besides their own browser. But right now, it'll be rolling out, like I said, a couple hundred users, 1,000 users, and they'll continue to go up because they obviously want to gain feedback based on, one, the accuracy, two, the performance of it. Are people enjoying it? How they can tweak the model. And also, just how well it's being received, and they'll start to roll it out there. They haven't given firm dates to that, but we can expect the weeks and the months as it goes on. We'll see it evolve and change. And I think that's one thing that's really interesting about all this AI stuff, whereas like previous technology, like, let's take smartphones. They came out, 2004, 2005, 6 with the Trios, and then you had the iPhone 2007. But if you look at that market, it took a good 5 to even 10 years of maturity, right? In 2012, that was when the market started to go really mainstream with consumers and really take off. So it was a very slow thing. AI is not like that. We are going to see almost in real time AI change and improve because that's just how these language models work. It's exponential growth and improvement. So although we may see a couple of articles that'll pop up like funny responses that were wrong, that stuff will very quickly go away because this stuff is very fast learning and changes very, very quickly, meaning we're going to see changes in weeks and months and not like, say, 3 or 4 years. It's going to be a really interesting thing to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest conversation, the headlines everywhere are, is this the end of Google, or will Microsoft unseat Google? Goodbye, Google. How do you feel as a person who's long, watched what Microsoft does and testing this out and seeing what is it an actual possibility that Google, even if they don't, it's not the end of Google, but to unseat Google as the search engine of choice? Do you think that's possible, or are they too far behind?
I don't think it's necessarily possible. I think Google's lead here is so powerful and so large that it'll be hard for Microsoft to overtake them. That said, historically how technology's worked in this area where someone comes up from behind and takes over, it requires two things. One, you need some sort of new innovation that is just unmatched. And we kind of do have that here, at least for now. The other thing is you need the leader, the market leader, to screw up so badly that it causes their market to fall. You saw that in browsers, right, with Netscape versus Microsoft's Explorer at the time. We do kind of have that dynamic set up a little bit here, but I don't think it's enough for Microsoft to unseat Google. They can absolutely possibly gain market share. It's a tough thing, though, because people are locked into search engines. They very much just like Google, and they know it, and they'll vouch to say the results are more accurate, even though that's not necessarily true. But it's also like browsers. People get very much locked into browsers, so I'm not sure people are going to switch large numbers. But going back to those numbers I mentioned before, 1%, $2 billion, Microsoft only really needs to continue gaining points here and take away that market share to really have an effect on their bottom line and hurt Google's bottom line. They have been growing Bing every single year, so it is improving. I don't know if it's going to be an exponential jump. It may do. Now, when it comes to Google, I would never count them out in this stuff. Obviously, they're working on AI too, but the consensus, and this was on the ground too, and talking to people behind the scenes and off the record, is that what Google is responding to Microsoft, they're not necessarily leading in this category right now. And we kind of saw that in that cobbled together press conference. And that's where I think a lot of investors lost a little bit of confidence in Google, because it doesn't look like they're nearly at the same level as where Microsoft is. Now, can they get there? Of course they could, right? They have a large team and everything. But as I mentioned, that they're a bigger it's their market to lose. They have to be a little bit more careful than Microsoft here, not to screw up their own search results and cause all sorts of havoc. One thing that was a little disturbing that I know people have a concern with Google's model is they don't show the annotations in the responses that like Microsoft's do. And this is important to publishers who want kind of click-throughs. And this stuff will hurt publishers probably in a lot of ways, since you won't need to click through to read the original source. But Google's model seems even worse. Now, whether they change that or not remains to be seen. But I think Google will respond in time. But I think Microsoft right now currently has the lead. And in the meantime, they're going to be doing a lot more of this. They were pretty open. Like, this stuff will go to Microsoft Word and Office. This will go into Outlook. It's already in Teams, or it's coming to Teams. They've already announced that. And it will definitely go into the Windows operating system on some level as well. So there's going to be a lot more of this stuff going into all their products. Google doesn't quite have that. They have search. They can do stuff with Android, and I'm sure they will. But that's kind of about it where they are for this, where Microsoft can be able to put it across their portfolio of software. And that's really has a bigger effect than I would say than what Google has.
Well, Daniel, I want to thank you so much for your time today to join us and talk about what's going on with Bing and AI. If folks want to follow you online, of course, they can head to windowscentral.com to check out your great work. But if they want to follow you online and stay up with what you're doing, where should they go to do that?
Sure. Well, I'm on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino. I'm on there pretty actively. You can always ask me questions there. I'm very good at responding to everyone. And I'm also on Mastodon. If you are offended by the Twitters, I'm at Daniel_Rubino, same thing, but I'm at Newsy Social, NEWSIE, and I do respond there as well. So you can find me there. And of course, we do the Windows Central podcast every Fridays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, also recorded. So you can check in there, but we'll be talking about all this stuff, of course, and more.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey folks, I'm Matt Pruitt, and I have a question for you. How do you think your hardworking team, with a Club TWiT corporate subscription plan, of course, show your appreciation and reward your tech team with a subscription to Club TWiT? Keep everyone informed and entertained with podcasts covering the latest in tech. With a Club TWiT subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. And they also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes and behind-the-scenes footage and special content like the fireside chats that I enjoy hosting. Plus, they also get shows like Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. So, go to twit.tv/clubtwit and look for corporate plans for complete details.